Yuval Harari is a new kind of modern man, one that naturally lives in a global and multicultural world that should and could be based on just, fair, and eco-friendly economy. As a modern man, he wants to be cut off from history in order to shape his own future. History actually ended for him in the scientific revolution, since it afforded human beings to take control over their future and replace fiction with reality. A man-made god machine, the same one that is depicted in the third season of Westworld, could perfect humanity from now on. Harari doesn't understand that you cannot predict completely what people would do and what the future of humanity will look like, since each person has a different background story which follows her or him into an unknown future, which means that she or he constantly has to make decisions. And the moment people's background is wiped out and they can no longer make decisions, but are treated as cogs in a machine that is reduced to something more fundamental, they will do anything to express their freedom, meaning they will become unexpected and try to destroy their machines and gods out of resentment. As a fanatic atheist that relies only on what he can physically measure, he acknowledges that his values are not necessarily true, but just better, since they are only based on facts given to him by what he believes is natural and neutral. This means that individuals in any society should be free to fulfill their natural desires, to feel safe, have a comfortable life, and to be constantly happy, and be motivated by the desire to succeed. This is why his thinking appeals to centrists, global technology moguls, and venture capitalists, and whoever seeks to ease their anxiety and find one simple answer to the question of humankind. For him, all the technological and scientific achievements were attained only because of the capitalist and imperialist systems. This in effect makes his writing biased, since what he is implicitly saying is that only these systems can get us access to the real, that is, to the truth. There is no doubt that these advances could have been achieved without these injustice systems. One can argue that science and technology developed faster in contemporary history because of secularism. That is, because human beings realize that they are free to govern themselves and gave themselves more intellectual freedom, which means that the explanation he gives in his book is not only biased, but might also be just wrong. Empiricism, which Harari resorts to, cannot always provide the best historical explanations, since it only deals with facts, results, and generalizes laws from them, rather than trying to discover what were the historical possibilities in different cultures and compare the different points of view as to what happened. Since values for him don't exist, he cannot imagine that history is motivated by the significance individuals and groups find in their lives, rather than by their natural desires, self-preservation, and their strive to succeed. But if history can only achieve harmony if it is driven by the desire to survive and the desire to gain more control and power, as Harari is implicitly saying, then history will mostly end up being a disappointing story, as opposed to a success story. His examples and the empirical data he presented in the book are good because they show how the human condition throughout history pretty much stayed the same, but the way human beings across history decided to organize themselves in their societies is different because in each era they discovered new meanings. History cannot be lawful or fictional because it deals with the actions of human beings in a certain place and time. Historical agents inherit a meaningful world they didn't choose, which affords them certain possibilities they could fulfill. But the moment they open themselves to new meanings, their possibilities change and they become fateful rather than fated. History, then, is a series of attempts by historical agents to overcome repetition, meaninglessness, by opening their future to new horizons that could be seen also by others after their death. Harari, of course, does not frame the facts that he presents to the reader this way, because again he wants to leave human beings outside the space of meaning altogether and push his belief that the scientific revolution and the modern banking system that supports it is the only answer for human progress and prosperity. For Harari, human action should be dictated by scientific and rational calculation that tries to remove the subjective human footprint from its equation. He advocates for scientism and for technological experiments on human beings, but at the same time, he warns his readers that scientism and instrumental reason could lead to Nazi ideology. Harari believes that society should run by scientists, capitalists, and technocrats. But this kind of society cures social diseases by giving everyone drugs and uses empty formulas and statistics to normalize any aspect of social life in the name of progress and prosperity. Instead of conducting political discussions, policies are implemented behind the backs of the citizens. This is why Harari's ideals, in effect, could rule out human freedom and democracy. Subjectivity for Harari and the cultural world could be a good fiction, a means for self-control, since they increase our chances to survive and help people to feel more free and happy. And in the same way, for Plato, lies can be a means of control in the ideal city. Any appeal to transcendent authority tries to silence the singular and plural first-person perspectives, since they could lead to the tyranny of the masses and the spread of stupidity and cruelty. This is why for Harari, only professional politicians, scientists, corporations, investors, and technology pioneers should run society as they think it ought to, and just lie to the people for their own good during the elections and tell them they have the power to change society. In Harari's ideal city, institutions that are motivated by a certain ideology form a political body rather than the other way around. It is true that democracy killed a great and virtuous man like Socrates, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be improved so that political and social activists won't be silenced and killed, as in many formal democracies today that are run by oligarchs and technocrats. The danger today is that all Western democracies, including Harari's homeland, Israel, would resort to the Chinese or Russian model in order to be able to compete with them. As Harari, at the end of the book, demands from his readers, we should also ask who we want to become, or in other words, what is the meaning of our social and political lives. Contemporary capitalist societies might be safer, as Harari shows by using his statistics, but it doesn't mean that human life got better or freer. Harari argues that since World War II, nations realized that war is not profitable, but that's not true. If anything, it might mean that military force and economic power is just more consolidated and centralized in the 21st century. One can argue that today human beings have to deal with many existential threats, from pandemics, atom bombs, and ecological disasters that human beings in other times did not have to deal with. And because they live in ultra-formal, curated, rigged, and rational societies, their needs and desires are not taken into account. For Plato, politics and art should be replaced by philosophy that is oriented towards the revelation of the absolute truth, And for Harari, politics and philosophy should be replaced by the natural sciences and technology. But it is not obvious that giving up on politics, that is, limiting the possibility for different points of view to exist, leads to positive results. For Hannah Arendt, the blind faith in scientific progress and certainty created capitalist, bureaucratic societies, which led to 2 world wars and the invention of the atom bomb. It brought about destruction rather than freedom, and aggression rather than agreements. If all aspects of life are run by experts, people don't see the value in politics. But of course, Harari doesn't see it that way, since for him, human progress is scientific progress. If science is advancing, then surely humankind is. Human beings are free when they are free to participate in politics. That is, when they are free from necessity in order to form their own objective reality that consists of everyone's point of view. In this objective space, they can act freely, rather than being subordinate to only one point of view, that of a god, nature, a master, or a tyrant, which amounts to living in a desert, an empty space in which they cannot have relationships between other human beings. For Harari, on the other hand, politics is only supposed to help people to increase their chances to survive, to be happy, successful, and to minimize their sufferings. That is, to deal in a better way with nature, with the objective reality that has authority over them and created their subjective challenges as any stoic. Because Harari is a utilitarian and an empiricist that relies only on biochemical data, the good life is the happy life, rather than the just, fulfilled, and meaningful life. He argues that those who find happiness in their personal lives with their loved ones and in their community with others are delusional, because happiness can be measured only in the brain. This is why being a good liar and tricking your brain is the recipe for a good life for him. It involves exercising Buddhism to condition one's mind through punishment and restraint, taking Prozac, or perhaps laughing out loud without any reason. If that doesn't work, Harari suggests that there is hope, because in the future we might be able to design a new kind of human being, one that cannot be sad, or one with completely different consciousness. Or we might be able to replace human beings with cyborgs who cannot feel anything and live forever, with artifacts that cannot understand what it means to be human, so they won't be happy or sad. But instead of lying to ourselves, deny our feelings, or playing God and creating new species, we can share our painful feelings with each other in order to understand ourselves and our lives better, or change our habits in order to cope with our pain, and tell jokes and fool around with others in order to enjoy life. And at the same time, we strive for justice, freedom, and the fulfillment of our possibilities, since it gives us a sense of purpose. Harari's thinking is naive and disconnected from history. The purpose of human life is not to be happy, but to be free to project one's being with others onto the world. To enter into society is to enter into a system of injustice and abuse, into already historical failure. And the aim of historical agents is to try to find ways in which they can be more free in it, by making it more just, pluralistic, and creative. That is, to fulfill their purpose with others. Human beings won't necessarily set themselves free by hoping that the lies they tell themselves will make their lives better. Having a strong will to believe can make you blind to what actually needs to be changed. Instead of lying to themselves in a better way, what human beings need to do is to orient their being towards achieving more and more profound understandings in order to be free both from the authority of objectivity and the deception of subjectivity.